Okay, so as I mentioned, this is the MS in Psychology Admissions Deep Dive. I will be taking us through the application process, the admissions process. And if you have questions, we definitely will have time at the end to answer questions, but you're welcome to put questions in the chat. My colleague, Nick Lapito, is here as well. So Nick will be in the chat answering questions and sharing information. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me just share my screen and we'll get going with the MS in Psychology Admissions Deep Dive. Okay, I think you should be able to see my screen. Nick, can you just let me know if you can see the presentation side of the screen? Thank you. Okay, cool. So admissions deep dive for the MS in Psychology. We're not going to be talking so much about the program itself. So if you do have questions about the program, what the program entails, that I would recommend, I'd recommend checking out our open house videos or reaching out to us separately at admissions@paloaltou.edu. Today is primarily focused on the application and admissions process. So you're welcome to follow along in SciCast if you would like. If you haven't started an application yet, here's the link, paloaltou.edu/apply. We will send this out as well in an attachment, so you'll be able to access these links directly. So if you don't get a chance to write them down, you'll have them again later. Just some quick information about the MS in Psychology. It starts new cohorts each fall. So we are currently accepting applications for the fall 2023 cohort. The deadline to apply is August 4th. Important to note that that deadline is in Eastern time. So the application will close at 11:59 p.m. Eastern on August 4th, 2023. And classes will start in September. It's possible that if we fill up the cohorts, the application could close early, but we will definitely keep in communication with everyone to let you all know if the application is going to close early, or on the other side, if we extend the application deadline. I definitely recommend applying as soon as possible. Strongly recommend applying at least 3 weeks before the deadline, just to make sure your application is submitted, verified, and fully complete so that we can begin the review process. So here are the admissions requirements for the MS in Psychology. Similar to our other programs, you have to submit an application in SciCast, a resume or CV, a personal statement, all of your official transcripts or transcript evaluations, and 3 completed evaluations and recommendation letters from references. We will talk through each of these requirements in more detail throughout today's presentation. Additionally, if you did not major in psychology in your undergraduate, for your undergraduate degree, you'll have to complete 4 prerequisite courses if you haven't taken them already, including abnormal or personality psychology, biological or physiological psychology, developmental psychology, and statistics. I have a link on this slide for our website where you can see more information about what those prerequisite classes might be called, where you can take them, and we do not require the GRE. One quick note about prerequisites: they are only for folks who did not major in psychology. So if you majored in psychology, but maybe you didn't take biological psychology, for example, you would not need to take the prereqs. If you did not major in psychology, you do have to take all of the prerequisites. And it doesn't matter when you took them, whether it was a year ago or 12 years ago, you just have to have taken them. So the admissions process looks a little like this. You complete your application. It must be complete before we will review it. So the admissions committee needs at least 3 evaluations and recommendation letters are completed. All your transcripts are in, your resume or CV, your personal statement. And then some applicants may need to submit other documentation, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Once all of your documents are in, once your application is complete and verified, Then the admissions committee will do an initial review and determine if you will be invited to interview. If you are invited to interview, you will interview with a faculty member sometime between January and August. And just as a heads up, we have not yet started inviting MS in psychology applicants to interview. Well, we haven't started inviting any program applicants to interview yet, but we will in January begin inviting folks to do interviews. After you've interviewed, there will be another review of your application, and then we will send admissions decisions on a rolling basis. So that means what rolling admissions means is that we will be sending out admissions decisions throughout January until August as people are admitted. So instead of everyone being admitted all at one time for this program, we will send out decisions on a rolling basis. SciCast is the system that we use for applications for all of our graduate programs. It's kind of like the Common App, so you can apply to multiple programs, multiple schools, all within SciCast. If you haven't used SciCast before, you'll need to create an account to get started, and then you will submit all of your application materials directly to SciCast. So you're not actually sending anything to us at PAU, you'll be sending everything to SciCast, and it will be seen by us, it'll be visible by you if something, like when you submit a transcript, you'll be able to see that it was received. At SciCast, we'll actually be able to see the transcript itself, and any other schools that you apply to through SciCast will be able to see your application materials as well. If you have used SciCast before, you could possibly apply as a re-applicant if your previous application was in good standing. So it was either in progress, it was received, or it had a verified status. And what this means is that as a re-applicant, you can transfer some information over from previous applications. So any personal information, like your contact info, for example, any coursework you entered, any official test scores, any transcripts that you had sent to SciCast, you can roll those over into a new application cycle, but you will have to submit new recommendations, new resume and or CV, write a new personal statement, and then any questions in the program materials section will have to be submitted again. So this might save you some time if you've applied in the past. And of course, if you've taken any coursework since your last application, you'll need to send in those additional updated transcripts as well. And to get started as a re-applicant, there's a link underneath the sign-in information that says reapplying to SciCast ? You can click that to start the re-applicant process. One thing to note is you will need your CAS ID, CAS. Your CAS ID is going to be important when you're ordering transcripts, or if you reach out to SciCast with questions about your application, you'll need to be able to cite your CAS ID. So that's located in the upper right-hand corner of your SciCast account. If you click on the Add Program tab in SciCast, you'll see lots of schools, lots of programs that you can apply to. The quickest way to find us is to type Palo Alto into that search box at the top, and it will bring up PAU and all of our programs. But as I mentioned earlier, you can also add programs from different schools. You can add multiple PAU programs, but it's really important that you add those PAU programs so that we can then see that you started an application. So sometimes people will reach out to us to ask a question about their application, and we can't actually find them in SciCast, and it's because they haven't added us as a program yet. So you'll need to add PAU programs, or at least one PAU program for us to be able to access parts of your application. Nick, just before I go on to the next section, the next slide, are there any questions that I should answer aloud, or are we good to keep going? You could just give a thumbs up if we're good.
You're good. You can keep going.
All right, cool. So when you log into SciCast, you should see this My Application tab pulled up, and you'll see there are these 4 sections: personal information, academic history, supporting information, program materials. all 4 of these sections have to be complete for you to submit your application successfully. So we'll talk through each of these sections and how to complete them, what we're looking for, and how you'll know when your application is complete and ready for review. The personal information section is pretty self-explanatory. You're putting in your contact information. If you are interested in financial aid or scholarships, then here's where you'll enter your social security number if you have one. If you have military affiliation and plan on using any VA benefits, then you'll include that information here. And one thing that that applicants ask about a lot are fee waivers. So fee waivers have to be requested through SciCast. PAU doesn't grant fee waivers. We don't have access to do that. You have to request them through SciCast. So there is a link on the login screen to help you with the fee waiver process. But if you have questions, you can reach out to SciCast at scicastinfo@liaisoncast.com. The academic history section takes a bit of time, so it's important that you really read through it carefully. You'll need to enter all colleges that you attended. So the institution where you got your degree, any institutions you attended where maybe you have transfer credit. If you took some separate prerequisite coursework, you'll enter that information here, study abroad programs. And if you went to a school outside of the US to get your degree, then that's where you'll enter this information. Study abroad transcripts can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes we need a separate transcript and sometimes we don't need a separate transcript. Usually the way that it works is if your degree institution, so where you got your bachelor's degree, if they list out your study abroad classes in each grade on your transcript, then usually that's fine. We don't need a second transcript. Some schools, though, will just put in as transfer credit that you did study abroad coursework. You got 15 credits, and they won't say any more than that. So in those cases, we usually do need that second transcript from your study abroad institution. There's also a section in the academic history part of the application called transcript entry, which we'll talk through. And we do not require the GRE. We won't review GRE scores even if you do submit them. However, some applicants will need to submit language proficiency exam scores. So the TOEFL exam or the IELTS. But if you're unsure if you're one of those applicants, you can reach out to us. Typically, if you went to a university or institution outside of the US where the primary language of instruction was not English, then we will likely require a language exam, but you can reach out to us if you have questions about that. So the colleges attended section is where you'll enter every college or university that you attended or received credit from. SciCast will then use that information to calculate your undergraduate, graduate, and cumulative GPAs. So the mean GPA, the average GPA for our incoming class of MS in psychology students this past fall 2022, was 3.23. We do a holistic evaluation of applications. So even if you have less than the recommended 3.3, or if you have higher than 3.3, we'll still review your application. As you can see, we had students who came in less than 3.3, obviously, and some who came in a little higher. So it's important that you send those transcripts to SciCast so that you have an accurate GPA. And if you went to school outside the US, you'll need a transcript evaluation, a course by course transcript evaluation. SciCast doesn't require that of students who went to school outside of the US, but PAU does. So if you attended school outside the US, you will need a transcript evaluation, and we will accept those from any NACES organization. So there's a link here, naces.org/members, that will show you some of the organizations you can use for a transcript evaluation if you need that. A lot of applicants use WES, W-E-S, for their transcript evaluation. And again, the GRE is not required. So ordering transcripts is probably the subject we get the most questions about in the application process. So it's really important that you follow the instructions in your application. So once you've entered all of your colleges and universities, you'll see a list of them under your colleges and universities attended. And within each university that's listed, there will be a button here that you can click that says order. Once you click that button, another screen will pop up, a little box will pop up, and it'll ask you if you want to order them electronically, which is option 1, or if you want to order them by mail, which is option 2. Whichever option you select, it's really important that you send the transcripts to SciCast, not to PAU. And I will explain how to make sure that you get your transcript to SciCast instead of to PAU. So the first option was to order electronic transcripts. So it's really, really important that you read the box that pops up, read all of the instructions that are in it, because it will tell you exactly what you need to do to make sure those transcripts get to SciCast. The first thing you'll want to do is confirm which electronic transcript service your school uses. Once you've figured out which service they use, then you'll look at steps 1, 2, and 3 to follow those instructions. So you'll find your school and you'll send it to SciCast, and you'll need the proper name for that. So in the case of National Student Clearinghouse, you're looking for SciCast American Psychological Association App Service Transcript Processing as the official name. It's really important that you reference these instructions so that you select the proper recipient. Then you'll also need your transcript ID number, and there's a little link to copy it directly from this page. So make sure that you follow these instructions carefully so that you don't send your transcript to the wrong place, or so that you don't forget to include your transcript ID number. SciCast has different names within different ordering systems. So just pay attention again to those instructions that pop up. It will tell you exactly what name to select as the recipient. For course by course transcript evaluations, for those international transcript evaluations, they have to be ordered through a NACES member organization, and you can still send them to SciCast. So again, you'll just want to make sure you have the appropriate name for US-based transcript ordering. And if you're sending WES evaluation, for example, which is one of the course by course transcript evaluation services, they also have an option to send directly to SciCast. So just make sure you're paying really close attention to who your recipient is. If you select option 2 to order by mail, then you'll still need to send to SciCast. And again, there will be instructions that pop up on the screen. The first thing that you'll do is download your transcript ID form. It generates automatically with all of your information. And then you'll need to send that transcript ID form to your school, and then it will instruct the registrar on where to send your transcript. Electronic transcripts are way faster. I can tell you from firsthand experience that if you mail it, it could take a month or longer before SciCast receives it and puts it with your application. Versus sending electronically, it happens usually within a week or 2. The transcript ID form looks like this. It will have your CAS ID, your information, and then at the bottom you see that there are instructions to the registrar of your school so that they know to mail this to SciCast's Transcript Processing Center. The other option you have is to click on the button that says, I will do this later, which means you're not ordering your transcripts right in that moment. You'll come back to it. So when you're ready, you'll just log into SciCast, go back to the academic history section, colleges attended, and then click the order button for whatever schools you still need transcripts for. You can choose mail, you can choose electronic, and you'll just go through those same processes. You could just do it later if you'd like to. If you're still in school and you haven't gotten your degree yet, you'll still need to send transcripts. You'll just send the most up-to-date version. And then if you're admitted, we'll reach out to you to request a final transcript later. The transcript entry part of the application does take quite a bit of time. So what the requirement here is that you enter all of your coursework exactly as it appears on each of your transcripts. And depending on how many transcripts you have and how many courses you've taken, it could take a little bit of time. So you'll want to block off time for this, probably at least a couple of hours to get this finished. And it's really important that the information that you enter matches exactly what's on your transcript. Otherwise, SciCast will flag it and tell you that there's an error. The other option here is you can opt to do a professional transcript entry, which is essentially you're paying SciCast additional fees to enter your coursework for you. So you would send your transcripts into them, they'll enter in all of your coursework, send it to you for approval, and then you'll let them know, yes, this looks good, and they'll verify your coursework. A lot of times, the professional transcript entry takes a couple of weeks after your transcripts have arrived. Whichever option, whether you choose to enter the coursework yourself or whether you have SciCast do it, you definitely want to make sure you apply early enough to give yourself a few weeks to get all of the coursework information verified. Once your coursework is verified by SciCast, you should get an email that looks something like this, telling you your application's verified, they've confirmed your coursework, your GPA calculation. This doesn't necessarily mean your application is complete, because you do still need at least 3 recommendations that are completed, but at least the coursework parts are all verified. So you'll definitely want to make sure that you check for this email from SciCast at least a week or more after you've submitted all your materials. The next section of the application is supporting information. So it's here in this section is where you'll be entering information to get your recommendation letters submitted. So you'll be entering your recommenders' contact information, usually their name, their email address, and the due date for when you want them to have the letters completed. We recommend having your recommenders use really generic language like psychology program, or if you're applying to the counseling program, they would use counseling program, your institution, because if you're applying to multiple programs at multiple schools, your recommenders are only submitting their recommendations once, and then every school you apply to through SciCast will see those recommendations. So we recommend keeping them generic just so that it doesn't hurt your chances at any other institutions if you list just PAU's names. Easier for you, it's easier for them to just keep it kind of generic so that those letters can be used at multiple schools and programs. There's also the experiences, achievements, licenses, certifications, and fellowship sections are here. If all of this information lives on your resume or CV, you can leave these sections blank. It's actually a lot easier for us to just go straight to your resume or CV and see this information versus scrolling through each of these sections, and it will save you a whole lot of time to just skip these sections and put the information directly on your resume or CV. If this information is not on your resume or CV and you want to highlight it for us, then you can, of course, fill these sections out too. When you request your evaluations and recommendation letters, this is the screen where you'll submit your references information, and you can send them a little note as well, but you'll want to make sure that you give them adequate time to complete their recommendations, but also keeping in mind the due dates, because we won't review your applications until they are complete, including these 3 references. Here's some guidance on who to ask to be a recommender for you. So we are looking for recommendations from current or former college and university instructors, people who have taught you, or academic advisors that you've had, current or former supervisors or managers in your workplace. If you volunteered anywhere, your volunteer coordinator or the person who manages your volunteer place could write a letter. Academic advisors, research lab supervisors, clinical work supervisors are all excellent recommenders. We do not want to see recommendations from your elementary or secondary school teachers, any informal mentors, your personal therapist, or just some therapist that you know who's a friend or family member. Your own clients or customers are not great references. Family and friends or family friends are definitely should not be writing your recommendations, or anyone who doesn't know you in a professional or college level academic context. So really stick to professional and academic references, personal references really are not, we would really discourage you from having personal references because we want to hear from people who have worked with you or who have taught you, supervised you in the past or currently. The program material section is where you're answering questions specifically about the PAU programs that you're applying to. And there's also a lot of information on the home tab. So once you click on program materials, you'll be taken to whichever program you select. And you'll need to read what's on the home tab, including the location restrictions. Oh, whoops, those cohorts, that cohort information is incorrect. It's only fall cohorts online for the MS. My apologies for that. You'll complete the questions tab and you'll upload your resume or CV and personal statement. So location restrictions, if you live in any of these states or if you plan to live in any of these states, unfortunately, we cannot provide online education to folks living in these states. So just something to keep in mind. If you live in these locations but are planning to relocate somewhere else, you can always let us know. But if you do apply, we will reach out and let you know that we can't move you forward. And then you can tell us like, hey, actually, I'm moving, or whatever your circumstance might be. Your resume should include relevant work and academic experience, any full-time employment, volunteer work. Your personal statement should follow the guidelines that we provide for you in the application. You should address the writing topics, definitely read it aloud, edit it, re-edit it, ask someone you know to review it, and really avoid oversharing detailed information like self-disclosure that's really personal. I know that sometimes, there can be difficult moments within people's lives that really shape who they are. However, when there's really heavy personal disclosure and a personal statement, it could sometimes signal like a lack of boundaries, for example. So you just want to be really mindful of sharing enough, but not oversharing, because again, these are strangers who don't know you reading these applications. So just kind of thinking through like, what would you tell a stranger? What's going to help shape your story without oversharing? So something to keep in mind. And again, have someone review it for you if you're unsure, but just something to keep in mind as you're writing your personal statement. Personal statement criteria is in the application. I'm just putting a snapshot of it here too, but it should be less than 3 pages. There's just a couple of points to address, and so you'll want to make sure that you read through those and address them in your personal statement. And then once you've completed all 4 sections, personal information, academic history, supporting information, and program materials, your screen should look like this. They should all be green. They should all have little text, and that lets you know that all of these sections are complete. And then you can submit your application. So you'll go to the submit application page and you'll click the submit button for whichever programs you decide to apply to. And once you've applied, you'll see this little green check here that's circled, and it will show you that, yes, you have submitted this application, and you can look at the payment history for that as well. You can check your application status after you've applied by going into your application and clicking the check status tab at the top, and you'll be able to see your application status, your transcript statuses, and the status of any evaluation. So for example, on this page, it looks like transcripts have arrived. One of the evaluation / recommendation letters has been accepted, but it's not yet complete. And you can see the application statuses here. So in progress means it hasn't been submitted. Verified means that SciCast has reviewed your academic history and verified it. When your application is complete, including all 3 of your evaluations and recommendation letters, and your application status is verified, then that means that you're eligible for review. Some additional resources that you can check out. The Applicant Help Center and SciCast is super helpful. Again, we'll send this out to everyone so that you have access to these links, and you'll be able to click on them and visit these pages. And our website has more information about the MS Psychology admissions process. If you want to know more about the program, I've linked the open house session here so that you can go back and watch the recording of our MS and PhD open house session. They are presented together at the open houses. And then if you still have questions, you can reach out to us at admissions@paloaltou.edu. And then this is just some data from the fall class. So the admit rate was about 87%. There were 36 new MS students. The ages ranged from 21 to 43. 3.23 GPA was the average, and 41.67% of our new incoming class were first generation students. And with that, we will wrap up the slideshow.